Caliente Mercedes Vasquez is a certified crystal healer, Reiki Master, psychic medium, Femme Attuned movement teacher, and spiritual life mentor. She is a light bearer, a way shower, and facilitator, and her love for performance and creativity, combined with her gifts for mysticism, has allowed her to follow her soul's calling and to help others find theirs. She does one on one soul healing sessions and facilitates workshops to help realign and balance chakras. Mercedes also helps others connect to their soul's wisdom by using movement, sound, channeling, crystal, Reiki, and self love tools to help them activate their soul's purpose and activate the healer within. In this episode, you're going to hear a tech glitch. I had set my podcast microphone as the microphone on Zoom, but in the middle of our conversation, about 4 to 5 minutes in, the Zoom platform switches my microphone setting. And I don't know why or how, but Mercedes and I think that it was spirit and the universe trying to get our attention. And what happens in this episode is a really moving moment towards the end of our conversation when I feel like I hear something that I definitely think I needed to hear that very day. And I think that was the purpose of the microphone glitch. It was like, hey, pay attention today, which I always pay attention. But today was particularly special. I needed to hear what was coming through Mercedes' part of the conversation. You're going to hear all of this on Third Eyesight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Mercedes, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. I can't wait.
Me too. And so tell us where you're based and about the work that you do.
Okay, so I am based in New York. I was born and raised here, and now I'm on Long Island. So I'm in like the Nassau Valley Stream area. And so the work that I do, oh my gosh. Okay, just to start, I do a lot of one-on-one soul healing sessions with clients. That's my spiritual practice. I also do crystal Reiki. I work a lot with crystals, energetically, with to align chakras, and also as a meditation tool to connect with your spirit guides or just to go into other realms. And I also facilitate breathwork sessions. I currently have one tomorrow for the Lionsgate portal. I'm not sure when this podcast will come out, but there'll be one tomorrow. And I do some live group breathwork sessions and movement. I do a lot of movement sessions too. So anything
Wonderful.
to get the mind, body, spirit flowing.
And how did so there's so many modalities, like a
Yeah.
renaissance of woman. I love it. And what was the first modality that what was the one you started with? Or were there a couple that were your first that you started with?
Um, well, as a young girl, I come from a long line of spiritists, people who connect with spirit. My mother is a trance medium. I knew of my spirit guides as a little girl. Doesn't mean that I was practicing or working since that. I think that growing up, you get assimilated to the 3D world, you forget about your spirit side and you just want to live and be of the world. So I did a lot of that, experiencing being human. And so I want to say there's a foundation of me just connecting to spirit, of talking to my spirit guides. But what really brought me back and into this line of healing and being of service is actually working with crystals. They were I had gotten an Akashic record done once, and at the same
Oh, you
time,
just cut out for some
oh,
reason.
sure, where did
Yeah, you
I?
just went silent. I don't know how.
Oh, okay, but you can hear me now?
No, that was weird.
Uh,
Let me see. Mute. I just asked to unmute.
can you hear me now?
No. Oh, that's so weird. No, nope.
Spirit definitely has our attention.
Yep.
So yes, uh, so how I got reintroduced and started creating this spiritual practice for myself and for others is that I was really called to work with crystals. Um, and even now, I have my Amazonite crystal, which is a crystal to help you speak and to ground you and to give you confidence so that you could open up the throat chakra. So through another mentor of mine, I did an Akashic record reading, and she did crystal Reiki on me, and it blew my mind. It changed everything I was thinking about. I was going through a really dark night of the soul, and I thought, okay, this is my entryway back into spirit, because I had been so disconnected from like what I knew. And growing up as a spiritist daughter, I there were these rules that I couldn't understand and I didn't know how to fit into. So being pulled out of that and into this 3D world where it was like fun and life and money and love, it was a nice way to just like forget about what I knew, forget about my family spiritual practice. And then with crystals, I found a way of reconnecting myself and bringing me back to my foundation, to my roots. And so my spirit guide, who was with me when I was 4 years old, my mother told me I used to channel her, never left me. I felt like I left her, but she was always with me. And I would get signs, or I would get messages, or I would get like preventative, like something would happen. And it was to prevent me from doing or going with certain people or going down a certain path. And as I was working with crystals, I got Reiki certified. I'm a Reiki Master. Immediately I started getting messages. And I was like, oh, like spirit's talking to me. And I would connect with the crystals, and you can hear when the crystals are speaking to you. And so it just started to like develop naturally. And then I went to the holistic school of Holistic Studies Institute. And it was like coming home. I met so many souls and people like myself who always knew we were intuitive, who always knew we had these amazing psychic gifts, because we're all psychic, right? We are all psychic. Just not all of us are tapped into it. Not all of us know how to use it. It's just like not all of us are going to be doctors, but we all have an affinity to connect to our sixth sense. And so with this group, it was just like a reminder that I had this from when I was little, from when I came into this world. And now I get to play with the different modalities. That's why there's so many modalities, because I love it all. I really do enjoy it. And I am also an actress. And so there's a part of me that likes to perform. And I know that when I'm acting, I'm also channeling. It's just another way of connecting with spirit. And we're inspired all the time, which I've always felt that creativity and my spirituality were one in the same. So because of through the crystal Reiki practice, I started to do one-on-one sessions specifically right before the pandemic, and then a lot during the pandemic because people were needing it. They were like, oh my God, especially people who were not used to being with themselves, being alone, quarantine. And I just started to offer like distance Reiki, and then it became energetic Reiki, crystal Reiki, because I couldn't physically put crystals on them. And then it became like, spirit is here. Do you want a message from your father who passed? So it just started to develop that way. Yeah, so pretty much that's how it is. And then I found breath work, because I've also done plant medicine. And that was another way of opening me up even deeper to like my ancestors, into this planet, into this earth, this beautiful Pachamama. And that was another way of me like expanding my gifts.
I love how you put the way you put it, that it's not that your guides left you, you just weren't, for a while you weren't maybe acknowledging them proactively. And
Right.
it's kind of how I see it too, whether it's our loved ones or spirit guides, ancestors. It's not that they're far away, they're always accessible. It's about whether we want to tap in, even if we may not quote unquote feel it, like they're always there. We just need to tap in. And
Yeah.
And what, it's interesting to me that you are also an actress, and you mentioned movement, movement as a form of healing in your work. And one could say that acting, I mean, it is a form of movement, I guess, in a way. So and so I'm
Absolutely.
curious to hear, like, did you start out with acting first before you did this as a business, or was it happening at the same time?
It's still happening because I have to say that your passions don't leave you either. You may feel like, oh, I can't do that anymore, but if it's in you, there's a will, there's always a way. So to answer your question, yes, acting was first. It was my first love, and it will be always my first love. I just was really shy, so I didn't pursue it as much as I would want. And then, but I did. I went to school for acting. I was in a lot of off Broadway shows. I even currently have an agent right now, because again, it's just like spirit, you know. And you know what's interesting? I know for a fact my main spirit guide was also a performer. She was a healer and a performer, mainly a dancer. And so when she is doing her healing, it comes in movement. So it's interesting. And you also tapped into the movement part, because movement is energy. We're like, you know, moving our emotions, moving through whatever stuck energy, whatever trauma we may be experiencing. And so I felt like acting was my foundation, and it's always going to be there. And then it brought me into this. So right now it's both. Although primarily right now I'm heavily into the spiritual practice.
I love that. And it's interesting, not to bring in a lot of personal stuff from my end, but I just can't help but relate, because I grew up wanting to be a performer, and I haven't
Mhm.
realized that yet, but not yet,
Right. I was gonna say
but
it's not too late. It's
not
never
too
too
late. You're
late.
right.
Yes.
But I like, for example, I see myself speaking in front of people one day, and maybe it's not acting or being in a musical, but there's an inner performer in me that it's like I can marry my spiritual practice and
Hmm.
my spiritual modalities with authentically, that with a sense of performance, like how to entertain people,
Hmm.
while still being authentic to the ability, that I have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I really relate to what you're saying a lot.
Yeah. I love that. And you know, FYI, because recently did a an interview with someone who was doing, and you would love this because I know you're into tarot reading, right? Tarot cards. Star Con Festival, which is done by a friend of mine, Christiana Gaudet. And she does this convention every year where everyone who does tarot comes to this, and there's tarot sessions and mediumship sessions. It's just beautiful for everyone involved in tarot. And we were talking about how mostly everyone in this world has an entertainment or an artist background. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I do think that somehow they're like one of the same. It is a creation, it is an inspiration. It is like you being on stage, speaking, sharing authentically. You're doing it now with your podcast and whoever watches you as well. But it's like there is an innate feeling of being seen and sharing that. That's it's like our vessels are our art in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, most people I come across have this background as well.
And when I think specifically about acting, I've always seen acting as a form of channeling myself, like, because it's
Mm-hmm.
there's a level of empathy. I mean, I remember in Miami, when the group in Miami, the Cubans would say, like, when an actor was really good at the role, se lo comió, like
Yeah,
they ate up the role. Like, it's like you are embodying the character and making people believe that you are the character with the character's personality and emotions. There's a level of empathy that I think you need to have, in my
absolutely.
opinion, to embody the character,
A
because they may
hundred
be wildly
percent.
different from who you are. You know?
No, it's definitely you're channeling that character. You're becoming whoever you're portraying, and that is so powerful. And then to add to that, one of the things that I take away from acting that it's so amazing, especially when you're on stage, is that working with energy, like what the audience gives you. So let's say you te lo está comiendo, ¿verdad? You have this character that is like hot and you feel it, and then you're feeling it and you're giving it back to that actor, and that actor is receiving it. And then there's something that's done there, this creation with the audience, which is amazing.
Absolutely. It's magical. It's a magical
Yeah.
exchange of energy. And I want to ask you to hone in on some of the work you do. I noticed that you offer, and let me know if I'm mistaken, but you offer
Hmm.
soul healing as
Hmm.
well as, like, in addition, Reiki healing.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear from you, like, just for those of us who may not be aware, like, what is the difference between soul healing and Reiki healing?
To be honest with you, not really, except that, okay, so Reiki is um it's like divine, universal life force energy, right? So anyone and everyone can do Reiki. Reiki is a Japanese method, and it has its name, and it comes from this person who created it, and we all adhere to it and we honor it, and there's codes that you have to be attuned to in order to do certain healing, right? And healing placements. But the idea that we can all tap into universal life force energy, like if you really connect and you're vibing high and you're doing, and you just with that intention that I'm just a vessel, and that I am a vessel for source, and this energy that's coming through me is coming out through my hands, through my chakra, palm chakras, to whatever, whoever needs to receive that, and then that person is receiving it because they're doing the work too. I'm not doing the healing. I'm not doing the healing at all. It's all about where it's coming from and where it's going, and I'm just the vessel for that. So that's, to me, that's the Reiki healing. And then soul healing, I mean, it's the same, you could say, but what I define for me personally, and everyone can have a different definition of that. Soul healing is working on yourself so you get back to the place where you connect to your truest, authentic essence, that passion, that person who's always wanted to perform and never did, and what held them back, or that person that has wanted to just shine bright and has been dimming their light for so long because of everything they've been conditioned to believe and to it's so. And I'm sorry if I'm getting a little too passionate and theatrical. I don't
No, this is beautiful. I love it.
It's that coming back to source, to that soul spark, to that place in you that when you were little was so alive, that no one can put out, and that no one can say, oh yeah, Juan, don't do that, or be yourself. It's that little, that place in you. So that's what I try to aspire to and help my clients connect to. um and it's work, right? It's not something that you can achieve overnight, but it's something that, with a different mode. That's why I offer different modalities. And I hope that with the different modalities, people can find what works for them and then continue to cultivate their own healing. Because I believe, as quote unquote healers, we're not here to heal people. We're here to guide people, facilitate healing, and show them how they can heal themselves.
I think that's an incredible intention to have. I like to think that, well, I know I try to have the same intention with the way I feel spirit
Mm-hmm.
heals through me when I channel people's loved ones. So it's like we have to gives ourselves as practitioners the credit for being open to channel, but it's a co-working. It's us with the universe, with God,
You're
whatever we want
right.
to call it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the soul healing, that resonates so much with me. And I wanted to ask you, do you find that when people undergo soul healing, or just when you've read up on it, or in your own practice of people, do you feel that people tap better into their intuition after soul healing, or there are things about them that unlock? I would imagine so, but like, what tends to unlock for people when they undergo soul healing?
So this is okay. What I've noticed, and sometimes people shy away from this because when you unlock everything, right? The shadow. There's the light, and then there's the
Yes.
shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody wants to deal with the shadow. So it's hard. It's easy to connect to their intuition. It definitely does open up. your intuitive abilities, because you start to trust yourself, right? Once you start to trust yourself, you start to trust your intuition, your that hunch you had, those dreams that were telling you, you start to see that. What I do get is people feeling validated when they have felt a hunch or knew or got that gut, sensation. But then to go deeper into this work, you have to face your shadows. And that's where people get stunted or just kind of like, oh no, I'd rather be ignorant over here. So I do offer a little bit of that, but that's also like you have to be ready to do your shadow work.
Got it. Yep. I've been there. I
Mhm,
am always there, and it's about being
mhm,
open. It's always gonna, I feel like it's always the shadows. Well, just like when you're standing in the light, as long as you stand in the light, there will always be a shadow.
always.
And it's okay to embrace it and talk to it, and yeah, so I that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, the more we love and own our shadow, the more that we can be in the light. And one of the things I learned, I forget the person who said this, but it brings you to this place of radical love. Like not just love, radical, unconditional love when you're able to accept and love your shadow the way you love your light. And I'm like, whoa, I sometimes I think I'm not even there yet. Like I'm still a work in progress, but to be at that place where you could just be like, oh, it takes the work.
And maybe embrace other people, um
Yes,
for everything they are, including their light and their shadow too,
yes,
and setting boundaries where you need to, but
absolutely.
because lights flicker at different frequencies, you got to set some boundaries. But yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I have to say that boundaries is like different, definitely a learning lesson, especially for light workers and people who are facilitating of healing and light and souls, because we have to have boundaries of spirits, we have to have boundaries of people, we have to have boundaries with, and then we attract people who are the opposite of that. Um, but yes, to I just wanted to just pinpoint on what you said, that it does allow you to accept others too in a much more loving way. They're good and they're
Absolutely.
bad, and you get to understand them more. Like, oh,
Right, right. I noticed that you offer, and I love that you offer this, and I'm very curious to talk to you about the free crystal energy session that you provide for the Black and Brown community.
mm.
So, yeah, why did you decide to do this? What inspired you to do this?
I think I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning. It was more of like we were in the pandemic, we were quarantined, and there was a lot going on. The George Floyd, um, and just a lot of systemic racism was coming up in the surface. What I felt was happening is that not only were we having dark nights of the soul, the whole entire collectively the world was having that. That's what we were going through. Like we went through like shutdown period, and it was very scary. And for those who didn't have a strong spiritual practice or didn't have a healthy outlet mentally, emotionally, didn't have friends to speak to, didn't have some sort of therapy or some outlet, they were not in a good place. And so specifically because of the riots and the systemic racism, I realized that people of color, brown and black communities need it the most because it's not accessible to them, whether it's financially or it's because it's not brought into their communities as much. Like one of the things that was accessible is our connection to our ancestors, and that is huge. But it's not really talked about. It is now, more now than ever, and I love that about us. But it wasn't. And so being able to offer that for free, there were so many people who took it, and it was just a welcome like relief to just receive something other and to reaffirm that you're not crazy, that you're not sick in the mind, that you are just dealing with it the best that you can, and that everybody else is going through something similar.
I love that you offer this to this community because um I'm gonna ask a question that To me it's not spicy, but to some it may be spicy, but to me it's really
Okay,
important to talk about.
okay.
I think accessibility, what you mentioned about accessibility for the Black and brown community to
Hmm.
services like this, or
Hmm.
the opportunities to talk about this, it's not always easy. And I have found, and I've never talked about this on the podcast, really not a lot, but I think it's important. I think especially because of social media, a lot of what tends to be the face of this work tends to be white passing, or white folks.
Hmm.
And I have no issue personally with someone who, of an ethnicity, who sees another ethnic culture and embraces it and respects it. However, I feel like in with the algorithm, social media, that when people think of sage and crystals, a lot of people think of a blonde woman in a shop in Manhattan. And
Yeah.
so what I would like to ask you is, if you feel comfortable sharing, like, um what are your experiences with that, or feelings about that? Because I think it's something that's not talked about heart to heart enough in this intuitive community, spiritual community.
I think that there's got to be a platform for more diversity, especially for people of color. I do think it's interesting because my circle is opening up to people like of different ethnicity who are in this line of work. But yes, I have to say that most of it is uh, white folks, and it's like it's funny because someone mentioned it to me recently. It was like yoga came from India, from and it but it took someone in the white community to bring it here for it to be popular, for it to be this whole big thing. Now everybody does yoga, or everybody knows of yoga. And I feel like it's a touchy subject. I think that things need to change a little. um Things need to change, and it's one of those things where I'm like, I want to be sensitive and I want to say the wrong things. Cancel culture is a thing. No, but I do think that we need to respect where things come from. We need to honor, and as long as we do things authentically, with love, with light, with respect of others, always respecting others, um that we are, in good standing. But I do agree that we need to see more people of color in all arenas, all walks, or all across the board, excuse me. And we're still not there yet.
I absolutely agree. And this is something, I mean, I'm very open on my social media about like how I feel politically. And it's, to me, like, race is not a political topic. It's what we need, that visibility. Um,
Yes.
and so I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, no, it's okay. It's a great question. It was one of those, I'm like, but
And
yes.
it is hard because,
Yeah.
on the one hand, it's not that, like, for example, white folks should not be in this space or do
Right.
this. It's about, like, okay, yes, they should be welcomed, and because of the systemic, colonialism and what religion has done to communities of color, like, a lot of this is what our communities of color, what our ancestors used to do, and then it was driven out of them. Um, Unfortunately. And so it's about helping this community that historically has suffered with that, helping them return to maybe what they could be passionate about, and they don't even know it yet, or a way to connect with their ancestors.
Right.
And so I think it's like a yes, and both things can happen at the same time. It's
Yeah, I agree.
and that's why I found your offering, the free crystal energy session for the Black and brown community so special, because there's so much healing that community deserves to experience, that we don't.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I don't mean to be on a soapbox, but I feel like in
No.
this realm, some psychics, at least in the realm of psychics, and um some people don't like to talk about this because it's almost like, well, let's just focus on the spiritual. It's like, well, we're also
Right, but that's
human.
spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, we're spirit, we're souls having human experiences, and we're in these
Experiences.
bodies for a reason, to
Yeah,
experience
yeah, yeah.
ourselves in these bodies with the color we have, the nose we have. There's a reason we are the way we are.
I agree 100%. And I think there's a reason why too. things have come up to the light now in this time, in this age. Like things are coming up for us to see, to do something about, not to just be like, well, that was 400 years. No, 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 no. We're still affected by that to this day. Racism is real. It's still here. And to your point, and I like what you said, this did and does give people of color a platform to reconnect to something that was taken away from them or was hidden because it was deemed improper or wrong or savage or primitive, or and yeah, this actually what you brought up would be a really good debate and discussion, um, for people to learn and to grow from, because even today I'm learning still. I'm learning. And 2021 up until now was eye-opening in a lot of things that we always thought or deemed hidden, or didn't, everybody knew about it, but no one talked about it. Now people are talking about it.
Yeah, and I noticed that in 2021 was when I didn't know I had my abilities until 2021. So very recently, and I'm not the
Wow.
only person. Many
Yeah.
2020, many people, because they were with themselves a lot, either developed an interest in or developed psychic abilities or just rediscovered their abilities. And the fact that that was all happening at the same time that what was in the headlines of the news and what we were awakening to in terms of the systemic
Yes.
oppression, I don't think, I mean, it's unfortunate that that's what it has taken for us to acknowledge it. But I also don't think it's there's no mistake that all of this awakening is happening at the same time.
No, no mistake at
Yeah.
all. I truly
And
believe that too.
what you said about when you were mentioning being in the light and having your shadow, I think there's that on the personal level, but also at the cultural societal level. We have shadows as a culture that we have to
Time.
face too.
Big
And
time.
there's a way to embrace them, but also like, take what will serve us and leave the rest and acknowledge it wasn't the what served us. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. During that time, I have another dear friend who's also very intuitive. She was offering, it was a systemic racism course for people of, no, for white people, led by people of color, to inform them. And it was so healing. That course was knowledge and truth, and also a very healing, it had a very healing spiritual aspect. It was like we were doing the work for our ancestors to open up the eyes of others, and kind of like transmute the energy, because we're still working through things.
Absolutely. I would like to shift gears and ask you, of course,
Yeah.
without naming names for the confidentiality of people
Yes.
you've worked with, but if you have a memorable or particularly impactful experience in a client session that you feel comfortable sharing that has really stood out to you.
Well, recently, as I mentioned before, I was part of the StarCon convention, which is a tarot and metaphysical convention in Florida. They do it every year. And I will share the information with you. um, I was doing my very first crystal mediumship workshop. And this was something that I learned from one of my mentors. And it was a combination of crystals that I knew to work with. I was also taught to work with, that opened up your third eye, connected you to the spirit realm. It was, you know, we can connect to the spirit realm without using any tools, without using any modalities, just by meditation, connection, intention. And if you open up yourself enough, you will connect, as I'm sure you have in your own way. But also, crystals are such an amazing ally to connect to any realm: the fairy realm, the nature realm, the celestial realm, the earth realm. And so I did a little workshop to connect to the spiritual realm, because I know people always want to connect to their loved ones or their spirit guides. And, I had done it for myself a few times. I had done it one on one, and I know that you can connect, but it was a room full of people. So I was just like a little nervous. And, never doubt spirit, never doubt your intentions or your connection, because once you have conviction and you just allow yourself to trust and flow, everything else takes place. And so I felt literally that I did nothing other than guide people to which crystal to hold and what intention to have. And immediately I was getting people crying, raising their hands because they wanted to share who just came through for them. I was so in awe. I was completely in awe and so grateful and so humbled that so many people had connected to either a loved one or a spirit guide. And I had one person in particular who was a tarot reader, but never connected to spirit. And she was like, I was so skeptical of this work, but I liked you. I met you. I decided to take your workshop. She goes, and immediately I connected with my birth mom because she was adopted. And she gave things that to her, only that connection she would know. And she was floored. And she was bawling. And everybody in the room was bawling. And so you can't deny that energy or that feeling, like you just know, and they experience that. And I didn't tell them you're going to meet this. I didn't, feed them anything. Just I told them which crystals to hold, and guided them through a meditation with the intention that they would meet someone there, and who they met was all up to them and their spirit team. And that was pretty cool. So I'm offering that again because I was like, whoa, that was profound. And I had a lot of people. I had one other person mention to me specifically that she always wanted to tap in, and now she knew she could. So it was very uplifting, and it hopefully, like, people felt healed and good about that afterwards.
And what's so empowering about what you just shared is I love how you focus on being the guide, and it shows your intention, because here you are guiding them towards harnessing their own ability. And it's like, I think that's just incredible, because I think it's just such a special intention to do this work, to help people to find their own power, to stand in their own power.
Absolutely.
And that's
I
just, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you for acknowledging that. And I just wanted to say where I had a moment in my early 20s where, as a young woman, sometimes women, when we're insecure and we don't know better, we kind of go against each other, right? We turn on each other instead of being a sisterhood and a collective. And so I was in line, and this woman looked up at me, like up and down, and she was just like nasty about what I was wearing. And I remember thinking I could feel bad about myself, or I can uplift myself and then teach her that she doesn't have to dim my light or dim her light just because she probably felt inadequate or whatever. And I remember having a conversation with her afterwards, and she was just like, no, you looked so good, and I just wanted to look that good, and I didn't feel. And I said, but see, you can have that too. And then we can celebrate others who have that too and not put them down. And that, I probably did not explain that situation good at all. But the point is, what I got from that was that I don't have to dim my light for anyone. But what I can do is show others. And then it gets so emotional because
I was just about to say, I needed to hear this today. I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going, please.
thank you. And we don't have to dim our lights for others, but we can shine our lights and then teach others how to shine their lights too, so that they don't feel that they have to dim theirs or dim anyone else's. That we can actually uplift ourselves and one another. That is really, really possible. That when you feel so low, or you just don't feel yourself, or you're vibing low, that there are others that can help you get out of that, or that you can remind yourself to get out of that and then help someone else to do so too. And I guess that's why I gravitate towards this so much, because I really want people to feel. And I think of my nieces, I want them to feel so loved, that they are an inspiration to others, not feeling so low about themselves that they make the wrong choices, even though their choices, their free will, right? Free will, but that they know that they have choices. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, it's okay.
I just was blown away by when you said you were getting emotional. I felt like coming on mic and saying I'm starting to get emotional because I could feel the act of service you approach this with and the love you approach it with. And honestly, and I said this in between our, because we had, for our listeners, we had a technological mishap on my end that was really weird and random. I think it was spirit. And I said in between our recordings, I said that maybe I needed that sign from spirit today because things are going on in life right now. And what you just said, I felt like I needed to hear today. So yeah, so that I was feeling that, and thank you for being so open and vulnerable because that's what this is about. I think I it's letting others standing in your power doesn't always mean we are always like straight faced and it's about being real, authentic. And so thank you for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you for receiving that, because the other thing I think of is just, and this is one of, because, everyone needs someone, right? Just because I'm of service doesn't mean that I don't need service. And so I have a healer, my own healer, who energetic healer, who works with me. And, she reminds me that sometimes, the more you are doing the work on yourself and you're helping others, the more you get hit with stuff. Like, you're constantly, and the more you're up leveling as a soul, the faster you get hit with stuff. So it should be a reminder, because this was told to me, a reminder for you that if you're going through something, it's because, one, you can handle it, and two, that's how you're up leveling. And just keep finding ways to deal with it and go through it, and know that you're never alone, right? Because we're never alone. We do have our people. Sometimes we have to wave the little white flag and be like, help. But
Well, you're channeling for me, even though you don't may not realize you are channeling for me right now because I definitely needed to hear all this today.
oh,
So thank you.
spirit knew that I did it.
That's classic humble intuitive. Us humble
Yeah.
intuitives. It wasn't me, but thank you for being open to
Oh,
delivering the message.
thank you.
One last question I have for you is what would you recommend to somebody? Like what advice would you give to somebody who says, um, I love this work. I want to begin. Where do I start? What advice would you give to them?
I would just say start. I always tell all my clients to meditate. I know meditating is not easy and it's not for everyone. And I get that. There are different forms of meditation: walking meditation, yoga, breathing, breath work. Take my breath work classes. There are different ways of meditating. I have a friend who runs. That's her meditation. She's running. However, I would instill that you find time, at least 5 minutes, whether it's meditation or not, to just stay quiet, be quiet. The quieter you are, the more you can listen, be with your breath, journal. Journal is a way of meditation. But 5 minutes at least to just receive, being present. It could be being present, it could be being with spirit, and then gradually make that 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Just start small, and don't get down on yourself if you miss a day, or if you don't do it, or if you get, there's always a chance to start again. But you have to start. You have to put in the work, right? As you mentioned earlier, we're co-creators. So the universe, God, spirit, will not help us if we're not helping ourselves. So we have to take at least the first step. And a good guided meditation is great. Also, finding someone in the healing service. They may give you, find someone and vet them, because not everybody works, meant to work with everyone. And you might find someone that resonates with you, may not, and that's okay. We all find our tribe.
Yep. I love that advice. And how can listeners learn more about you and what you do?
Okay, well, I have my website. It's calientecreatrix.com. And also, you can find me on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube at Caliente Soul Expressions. And that's Caliente, Caliente, Soul, Soul, Expressions, Expressions.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for chatting
Thank
with me
you.
today, like for our listeners to hear you. And again, thank you for your openness and just for being so real. This is the
Oh, I
first time you and I
appreciate
have
it.
talked ever. And
I
I
know. And I
feel
knew I
like,
wanted to talk to you too. I was like, I want to know him.
yeah, I love your energy. So thank you for sharing it with me and with
Thank you.
us.
And thank you for having me and for reaching out. This is a blessing. And it's always good to connect to another fellow intuitive. So thank you.
The pleasure is mine. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.